Okay, welcome back. I hope you all had a great weekend. Today, we're continuing our review of our newest RBT exam, where we're going through 10 more questions and breaking them down together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 full practice exams, a task list study guide. Our RBT combo pack comes with everything, and it is our best deal. And we also have the competency study guide as well. Questions, comments, please let me know. I'd love to help. Other than that, let's work hard, study hard, get to the questions. Question 1. Annie loves candy and will typically work to earn candy. Last week, the Easter Bunny brought Annie a 1-pound Snickers bar. Annie ate half of the Snickers bar and is now refusing to complete any tasks to earn candy. What is Annie experiencing? What is the question asking? Was asking about Annie's behavior, right? We're asking about Annie in particular after she ate the Snickers bar. What do we know? We know Annie loves candy and will typically work to earn candy. We can assume candy is a pretty strong reinforcer. If she's typically working for candy, it looks like a strong reinforcer. However, Annie now eats half a pound of Snickers bar and refuses to now earn candy for work. No longer does that candy hold value. And when something loses value, when a consequence loses value, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about motivating operations. Remember, motivating operations increase the value of a consequence or decrease the value of a consequence. And how does it typically happen? Typically, we are looking at 2 things. We're looking at either deprivation or satiation. Deprivation is when you don't have enough of something, and therefore the consequence increases in value. Or you can have satiation. You satiate on something, you have too much of something, and the consequence decreases in value. In this case, Annie did what? Well, she had too much candy. She experienced satiation, and the Snickers bar lost its value. Now, most likely temporarily. A week from now, she will probably start working for candy again. But at least temporarily, the motivation to work for this candy is gone due to satiation on the Snickers bar. It isn't ratio strain because we did not touch the reinforcement schedule. Ratio strain has to do with adjusting reinforcement schedules, and Annie is not being punished here. It is simply satiation, a motivating operation effect where the consequence is no longer as valuable temporarily. Paul records how many notes he plays correctly during his practice sessions. Yesterday, he played 30 of 50 notes correctly. What percentage of notes did Paul play correctly? Okay, so if you've been following, you know every now and then we'll do an average question, we'll do a percentage question, we'll do a rate question, because these basic calculations are something you need to know how to do for the RBT exam. You need to know how to find a percentage, right? A percentage, you're simply going to take the smaller value and divide it by the larger value. 100% is going to be our max value, so keep that in mind. So if Paul played 30 notes correctly out of a total of 50, how are you going to find that percentage? Well, you're simply going to put 30 divided by 50, and you're going to get 60%. Percentages, rates, averages, totals, don't miss those questions, okay? You guys need to understand how to find basic calculations. I know it's math. I know we don't like math, but we need to understand basic averages, basic percentages. All it is a simple division problem, right? 30 divided by 50, we get 60%. Paul played 60% of his notes correctly. You're in an RBT receiving supervision from a BCBA that works where you work. You start to develop feelings for the BCBA and would like to date them. If you want to pursue this relationship, what must you do? Most ethical questions, I think, are pretty straightforward and common sense once you understand what the board is trying to tell you about ethics. But in some cases, there are specific things you need to know. And in this case, we're talking about a relationship between a supervisee, yourself, and a supervisor. And the BACB is very straightforward and very clear on what they want you to do if this relationship begins to develop. Again, we're talking about a supervisor and a supervisee, not a client. So in that case, if you develop feelings for your supervisor reiterates or reciprocates those feelings, and you want to pursue a relationship, what needs to happen? A, disclose the relationship to your boss and the BAC, BACB board. Well, you may need to disclose the relation to your boss, but the BACB board is not going to care as long as you follow a few steps. A is not nearly enough to make this okay. Remember, you're still in that supervisor-supervisee relationship. That is the part that isn't okay if you want to get into a personal relationship. B, you are not allowed to date any BCBA that works where you work. Again, not necessarily true. But if you are in a professional supervision relationship, then yes, you cannot date that person. So what do we need to do? C, terminate supervision and wait 1 year before dating the BCBA. This first part is 100% accurate. We have to terminate supervision, that supervision contract, that supervision relationship, if we want to date this BCBA. But 1 year, we do not have to date. We do not have to wait 1 year. Therefore, we have D, terminate the supervision immediately. Yes, as long as you're still in that professional supervisor-supervisee relationship, you cannot get engaged in a romantic personal relationship. So if you want to date each other, that supervision relationship needs to be terminated immediately. Anna lives in a group home. Routinely, Anna accidentally grabs the wrong lunchbox out of the fridge and starts eating the food, even if it isn't her lunchbox. Anna's BCBA starts to put a blue dot on Anna's lunchbox. What is the BCBA trying to promote? What are we looking at here? We're looking at the BCBA's behavior. And when we're looking at behavior questions, make sure you identify who we're talking about here. The BCBA does what? The BCBA puts a blue dot on Anna's lunchbox. Why? Well, Anna always grabs the wrong lunchbox out of the fridge. What issue is Anna having here? Well, she's clearly having a discrimination problem, right? If she's accidentally grabbing this wrong lunchbox, then she's just going in there and not discriminating between the different lunchboxes. With this blue dot, what is the BCBA trying to accomplish? Well, she wants to obviously promote discrimination through the use of a simple prompt. So the BCBA is trying to promote discrimination. If we look at A, that's what we have. We need Anna to start discriminating between lunchboxes. Now, A looks like our best answer. Do we stop there? No, we read all of our answer choices. So B, differentiation. I just put a video out on discrimination and differentiation. Please go check that out if you are still confused on the two. Discrimination has to do with stimuli, in this case, the lunchboxes. Differentiation has to do with responses, more than one response. We're not talking about Anna's response here. She's grabbing lunchboxes. That's a single response. The problem is Anna's grabbing the wrong lunchbox. She's grabbing the wrong stimulus. So we're talking about discrimination. Generalization, we're not there yet. We're still talking in this isolated environment, this one fridge. Later on, it's going to be important that Anna generalizes the ability to discriminate. But right now, the BCBA is just trying to promote simple discrimination. And then prompt fading, we're introducing prompts, right? We're not fading it. We're introducing the blue dot prompt. So D is wrong. What is the BCBA trying to promote? Discrimination. If you wanted to use a measurement procedure to measure how often your son asks you the same question, what type of measurement would you not use? All right, let's be careful here. We want to use a measurement procedure to measure how often your son asks the same question. So how often, what are we talking about here? We're typically talking about response, right? Not necessarily time, okay? However, we can use a time-based measurement. That's where we need to be careful, right? This question specifically wants to know about this behavior. Your son asking you the same questions. Can we use interval recording? Well, you might say, well, we're looking at how often. Yes, but we could use a partial interval, right? Because remember, discontinuous measurement is not necessarily going to be as accurate, but is going to give us an idea of how often the son asks the question. Think about it. If we have a 10-minute span of measurement in 1-minute intervals, if we get a recorded response for every interval, that's going to tell us the son asks the question quite a bit. Is it going to be 100% precise? No. 100% precision would be frequency. Frequency would tell us exactly how often, but we could certainly use interval recording. So what about time sampling and permanent product? Well, remember, interval recording and time sampling are almost one and the same, right? If we use momentary time sampling, Again, is it going to be as accurate as frequency? No, but we're still going to be able to record if our son is asking the same questions or not. Permanent product, however, is not going to give us that ability. And why is that? Well, because permanent product, we're not actually observing the behavior. We're not worried about the behavior. Does asking a question produce any permanent product, a permanent item you can see, feel, touch? No. Once the question is asked, it's over. I can't come back an hour later and measure how often the son asks the same question. So the only answer here where we're not going to actually be able to measure the son asking the question is going to be permanent product. This is kind of a tricky question, okay? It takes a little bit of thinking. If you got this right, good for you, right? That's a great sign. If not, it's okay. Just review it a little more and understand if we need to directly observe somebody, why is permanent product not our best measurement tool? Dan wants his client to imitate him whenever he jumps up and down. What best demonstrates imitation in this scenario? Okay, so I got pretty specific here. Imitation, there's a specific way to think about imitation, and I'm not sure if you're going to need to know it at this level for the RBT exam, but it doesn't hurt to, right? So we're going to talk about pure imitation as it relates to ABA. And pure imitation in ABA is when the learner imitates immediately after the model engages in the behavior. So we're talking immediate imitation. And imitation is not evoked by a verbal SD, so it's not copy me. It's just watching somebody and then immediately doing it after. Those are the two main things, immediacy and not a verbal SD. So that's what we're looking for. What best demonstrate imitation? A, while at home alone, Dan's client jumps up and down. Was Dan imitating anybody if he's home alone? No, he's just jumping up and down. He's not imitating. B, Dan jumps up and down, and then the client immediately jumps up and down. Okay, what is the client doing? He's copying what Dan is doing with no verbal SD, and he's doing it immediately. B is a pretty good example of imitation. Do we have a better answer? C, Dan jumps up and down and then tells the client, copy me. Well, now what's the SD here? Remember, in imitation, the SD should be the act. If Dan jumps up and down and then tells the client, copy me, well, that's no longer pure imitation. The client is responding to copy me. And then Dan jumps up and down. 1 hour later, the client jumps up and down. Well, we're missing immediacy here. Okay. So remember, immediacy and evoked by the action itself and not a verbal SD. Now, again, you might only get a basic imitation question. That's okay. The more you know the stuff, the better off you are. This type of differential reinforcement is primarily focused on the absence of behavior. Okay, I stress differential reinforcement over and over again. If you've been following me, hopefully you get this question pretty quickly. As RBTs, we really need to know DRO, DRI, DRA. They may ask about DRL, but those are the three main ones, DRO, DRI, DRA. What do we ask ourselves when we're trying to discriminate between these three? First, you ask yourself, well, are we focused on a behavior occurring or a behavior not occurring? Well, if we're focused on the absence of a behavior not occurring, we're talking about a DRO. And a differential reinforcement of other behaviors, we reinforce whenever a behavior isn't occurring. So if we're targeting screaming, I'm going to reinforce when screaming is not happening. DRI and DRA, we're going to reinforce the behavior for happening, right? We're teaching replacement behaviors, we're picking a target and reinforcing that target. DRO is focused on the absence of behavior. DRH, higher rates, we are focused on the behavior happening at a higher rate. The weather recently changed, which affects your allergies. You woke up this morning with a runny nose, so you took allergy medicine, which cleared up the runny nose. This most likely functions as what? Okay, every now and then we're going to do a question like this. And I think this type of reinforcement / punishment procedure is the hardest to kind of grasp. One, we've always viewed this type of reinforcement, I'll just say this type of reinforcement in a certain way. And if you're brand new to the field, you have to think about it a little differently. And two, it takes a little thinking. So let's break it down. You wake up this morning with a runny nose. Antecedent, you take allergy medicine. Response, consequence is cleared up the runny nose. So have we added something or taken something away? Remember, we're focused on the consequence here. the response of taking allergy medicine. But what is the consequence? The consequence is the runny nose is taken away. We've removed the runny nose. And in the future, you're going to take more allergy medicine, so your behavior increases. So if we're taking away something to increase behavior, we're talking about negative reinforcement. Remember, reinforcement and punishment are consequences. We're focused on the consequence, which is cleared up the runny nose. We've removed the runny nose. Be very, very careful with negative reinforcement and negative punishment. Make sure you're looking at the consequence, okay, and not the response. And then, of course, you need to ask yourself, is the behavior increasing or decreasing? In this case, it doesn't specify if the behavior increased or decreased. So therefore, you would just have to do a little assuming, what you try to avoid. But in this case, you don't really have a choice. But it's pretty clear if you're going to take medicine to remove a runny nose, and it does, in the future, you're going to take medicine again. So you remove your runny nose. In the future, you take more medicine, negative reinforcement. If all of the following interventions were equally impactful, which one would we want to use last when providing ABA services? Kind of a golden rule in ABA, right? What do we want to use first? We want to use reinforcement first. Consider our 3 behavior change principles, right? Reinforcement, extinction, punishment. We want to use reinforcement first, extinction first, before we ever get to punishment. We try to avoid punishment when possible because of the ethical concerns around punishment. Punishment isn't permanent. Punishment doesn't teach a replacement. So in this case, if all of these interventions were equally impactful, which one would we want to use last? Would we want to use differential reinforcement, shaping, positive punishment, or functional communication training? Well, clearly, all things else equal, if they're all equally impactful, avoid the punishment. Use that last. Is that to say we never use punishment? Absolutely not, right? Punishment is very commonly used in ABA, but it needs to be used as part of a package, as a strategy. It's not our go-to. So we don't just jump to punishment without a strategy. So again, if everything else is equal, we're going to use a different procedure other than punishment when providing ABA services. And then finally, as an RBT, you're allowed to assist with which of the following. What do we know by now? We know the RBT's role is implementation, but you are allowed to assist your supervisors and BCBAs with what? Can you assist with parent training? 100%, right? You're totally fine to assist with parent training with permission. What about treatment planning? You should absolutely be involved in treatment planning as an RBT. You're around the client. In typical scenarios, you're around the client more than the BCBA. If they're not asking you questions in regard to treatment plans, okay, you need to start giving your opinion. Typically, you're going to know the client better than the BCBA just because you're around them more. So you absolutely assist with treatment planning. And then assessment, sure, right? You do preference assessment. You can take indirect data. You can take direct data. Absolutely okay to assist with assessments. So as an RBT, you're allowed to assist with all of these. Just don't forget your primary role, which is implementation. Okay, thanks for watching. Check out rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials, 3 practice exams, a task list study guide, and our combo pack. Questions, comments, please let me know. I'd love to help. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.